Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa. Everybody got opinions, let it go into my ear, then I'm
Welcome into the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler with you. Jason Elmquist along here shortly. Really good show coming up for you guys. Chris Dorado is going to join us at 3:25 to talk all that is NASCAR, as there has been a ton of news. Arguably biggest sports story of the day, of these last couple of days, coming out of NASCAR with the whole Bubba Wallace situation. We will talk to him about that and much more. He's down in Florida. We'll be able to give us a perspective on that. A ton of stuff to get to throughout the show. Major League Baseball might actually happen. I feel like we've said that over and over this whole time, that we have had back and forth arguments between players and owners, but this time it looks like it might actually be falling into place. We'll discuss all of that as well. A ton of stuff going on in the football world, college football, the NFL. Try to fit everything into a couple of hours here. How many of you guys have paid attention to the Bubba Wallace story? If not, I encourage you to go look it up. Bubba Wallace alleges that he found a noose in his garage, and it immediately was that, like I said yesterday, like that's sick. If somebody went in there and put a noose, and Bubba Wallace, who is the only African-American NASCAR driver, went in there and just laid a noose down, like that's obviously a problem. And then that's what we're going to get in with Chris Dorado, because we have photos circulating around the internet, pictures of Bubba Wallace's garage that have brought up a different discussion on, was this real? I personally don't believe that Bubba Wallace would go in there and plant a noose or anything like that. There just are a ton of questions because NASCAR hasn't released any official photos or anything like that. There have been no arrests made on anything with anybody involved that they know of. And here we are a few days later. So there's definitely a lot to dive into with that. You never want to be that person that looks at all this and immediately assumes, well, this can't be real, because things like this still do happen in today's world. But you've got situations like the Jussie Smollett situation, like the LeBron James situation a long time ago, and those types of situations that make you think, well, what if? Because we get all of this stuff. We know Twitter's a crazy world. There's lots of things going on revolving around this story. Could it be this? Could it be that? And my perspective that I immediately take on everything, and I've made this clear to anyone who asks, made it clear on everything that I do. When I look at a story, I don't immediately come to a conclusion. I like to look at all the evidence. I like to wait. If it's not there, you have to wait till it's presented before you can actually make a real argument on things. And that's what people don't do a very good job of in the sports world. They react emotionally. They don't pay attention to everything. So this is kind of the same situation. Obviously, if it really did happen, and I say really did because we're going off of Bubba Wallace's word here, then that's messed up. I don't have to say that. That's an issue, and it needs to be taken into an investigation, and someone needs to be found out who did it, and that person needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But it is important to wait on evidence as well. I think there's a big call right now for NASCAR to come out and make more evidence known. Were there security cameras around this area? We're talking a private garage here that holds a NASCAR driver's car. Was there photos leaked? Is there video somewhere? I mean, that's the type of stuff we need to know as a public. And I encourage people to make decisions based off of what is presented as real facts and evidence instead of emotion. If I can leave anybody with any advice, it would be that. So we're going to get to Chris Dorado with all that. He's going to have plenty to say about that, I'm sure. Oklahoma State released a basketball video yesterday, their basketball Twitter account. This was, well, they released a couple, actually. One of Coach Mike Boynton pulling up in front of Gallagher-Iba and saying that there's always a path. You know, there's always a path in place. And then there's another one of Cade Cunningham actually talking about the fan base, which is super important now that he's officially made his announcement. You'd love to hear that from him. I've got the video with him talking about the fan base. We're going to take a listen here so everybody that hasn't heard can hear what Cade had to say about all you Oklahoma State basketball fans out there.
Fan base, just because with Oklahoma State, it's different than every other fan base because other fan bases will get mad if you do something different or against, what they stand for. Oklahoma State, the fans have shown me nothing but support for whatever I feel is best for me and my family, and I really appreciate that, really.
Okay, Cunningham talking about what makes Oklahoma State different with their fan base. Been accepting from the go. And here's the thing, people looking in, I mean, did the environment that Cade Cunningham is coming into have to play in his decision of staying? Yeah, I think so. Did the support that he's already gotten from fans really play into his decision? Yeah, probably a little bit. And I think the hype is there, and it's definitely deserved. Talked about yesterday with Scott Wright, who joined from the Oklahoman, just how much hype does this team deserve and is surrounding this upcoming basketball squad. It's hard to put into perspective now, but it could be something special. I know people, well, what if we don't have a postseason? Yeah, puts a damper on things, but hey, you can enjoy Cade while we have him still. You're going to get Cade Cunningham for 1 year. You might as well do your best to enjoy every single minute, even if it means possibly not reaching the postseason. And we see more videos circulating of him working out with other players. Matthew Alexander-Moncrief. I liked it. He had the top player in Canada, the top player in the United States in the same video working out on the same team. How often does that happen? That's a great storyline. Canada, don't shake your head. They got some seriously good players over there at every level. Matthew Alexander-Moncrief is one of them. So, again, I try to manage my expectations for the basketball squad. But one really positive green flag here was that the majority of these players stayed. This could have been a situation at any other school where players would have jumped ship. Would any of us had blamed anybody on this team for saying we're not going to take a shot at not having a postseason and I'm going to get out of here? I don't think I would have. I mean, this is not something that you prepare for as a player or a coach or anybody on a team. Now, your immediate response is you're going to go out there and fight it, and that's what fans want to hear. It's what everybody wants to hear. But there's no guarantee. So the green flag here is that Coach Mike Boynton was able to make sure that everyone stayed on this squad. That doesn't happen in a lot of places. I don't think it would happen in a lot of places, especially with the talent that's on this team that could go to a lot of different locations and have a chance at a postseason. Let's go to the phone lines. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Go ahead.
Okay, the situation in NASCAR.
Yes.
There's got to be cameras. If there's not a video of that getting where it got, then it really ups my suspicion that there wasn't some other type of involvement there.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am too. I've seen, like I said, photos today were released of just from some Twitter users of what his actual garage looks like, and I would have to believe that garage is surveilled with multiple security cameras. I mean, what if somebody was able to attempt to break in and steal things or even worse? I mean, there has to be, with anything surrounding professional athletes, there's plenty of security. So that's kind of where I am. I think that NASCAR, if they have something, they got to release it now. Like, waiting longer doesn't help anything.
Yeah, because, I mean, if that's the case, if they don't have security cameras, then, I mean, I don't know you, but I'll be willing to come by the station and we can drive down there and just hop in there and take that car for a joyride.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. If they don't have some sort of security system, well, then that's an issue right there, big time. So that it had to be there. That's why that's my main concern with all this. Again, I'm not saying that Bubba Wallace just made this up, but in today's day and age where evidence and proof is something that people should be basing their arguments and everything else on, this is the same situation where we need to know. And I don't know about you, but I mean, isn't it justifiable with what happened with Jussie Smollett? And I mean, seriously, like, that brings up people's minds. Like, this has already happened before in different situations. Like, we can't have this happen again. We need to know the truth.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I mean, it's all of that combined. And but on a different subject and a much better one, Tom said something a couple of weeks ago. When they were talking about Cunningham coming back and the players on the basketball team, the situation, and when he said that, look, they're going to play if the season happens. He's going to get the games in. He doesn't need postseason for everybody to see who he is, what he's capable of doing, to get, to improve on his game. He doesn't need 3 or 4 games at the, after the season's over to improve on that. So he said being able to play the season is going to be enough for him. And I thought all along, and especially after a couple of the other players, when Likely came out and said that hey, he was enthusiastic about coming back, especially, but even before then, my thought was, when you look at some of the social issues that are going on, and a lot of people are like, you know what, our grandfathers went through this, our fathers went through this, and now we're going through this, and we're going to do something about it. And if we feel like there are injustices happening to us, and we're basically going to circle the wagons and say no more, I kind of felt like this basketball team was going to do the same thing. We think that what the NCAA did was an injustice to this team, all of these players who had no involvement, and really their coach. Our coach had nothing to do with this, and he's our coach, and we want to play for him, and we want to play for each other. And I kind of felt like they were going to go into it the same attitude. We felt like an injustice was served, and we're going to stick it in your face, and we're going to stick together, play, and we're going to win a whole bunch of basketball games and make you people look stupid.
Yeah, I think Mike Boynton probably made a little bit of that argument to his team. Said, hey, look, I think part of it was, too, I like he said, I want all of you guys to do what's best for you. But at the same time, he probably made his case by saying, hey, look, we have an opportunity here to still do something special. I mean, how stupid would the NCAA look if they ultimately keep the postseason ban? We have a fantastic year. We're poised to win the Big 12, what have you. Cade Cunningham just goes off. Then it makes the NCAA look really bad. I mean, they already do in this situation. And by possibly keeping the number 1 player in college basketball out of the NCAA tournament. A tournament that was canceled, by the way, last year, and they need to make sure that doesn't happen again, or make sure that it's as entertaining as possible. So they have an opportunity here to make sure, kind of like you said, and I'm sure Boynton put this out there, that we could all still make this a huge, huge point of emphasis that you can do everything in your power to screw us, but we're kind of going to do it right back by maybe, just maybe, being one of the most successful teams in the country and not even getting a chance to showcase it in your tournament.
Yeah, and another thing, some of the other teams that have more infractions of the same degree or worse, between now and the time that OSU appeal goes through the process, you would think that Arizona or a couple of these other schools would have their have something handed down to them in the next. They got months to get that stuff done. You would think that would happen, and their punishments are going to have to be, at least if they have twice the indictments, they're going to have twice the punishment. So you give a team twice the punishment. Now you may not be giving them the death penalty, but for all intents and purposes, you're giving them the death penalty. And then when you throw if they're able to put together something on Kansas's infractions, then it's nothing less than the death penalty of Kansas. And if you don't do that, then it makes OSU's argument that much more valid. They go, okay, we had one infraction against a guy that nobody at the school even knew was even happening. The school did not benefit from it. If anything, we were punished because of it, and it's hurt us. And now you have a school who benefited from it, the coaches benefited from it, the team benefited from it, and don't even get me started on the agents, who are the people that benefit from it the most, who would never get punished because they're a part of the legal system. But anyway, and if they were not to punish Kansas 4 to 5 times as much, which that would be a death penalty for a blue blood school, if that were not to happen, then they can go, okay, anybody that looks at this knows that this is not fair, and OSU will certainly win their appeal in those circumstances. You would think, but they've been unfair before.
Yeah, you would think, and I guess I wouldn't be completely surprised. I mean, just completely surprised if the NCAA maybe did reverse it, but I'm not. I'll just say I'm not confident because I know how the NCAA works, and then I know how they like to make sure that their point comes across as final. But I will say this: I think that there needs to be some expectations here. We lowered a little bit on Kansas. I think that we look at what possibly could happen, and do they deserve the death penalty if all that is true? Absolutely. I mean, they deserve that punishment. But what Kansas is going to do as a big blue blood school with the funds to do so, and they're already trying to get out in front of this, Bill Self himself going out there and filing lawsuits against the NCAA. It's going to happen that way, where they will send every attorney they can. They will put tons of money into legal fees and do what they can, just like North Carolina did, and they will fight it tooth and nail, and I will not be shocked if they come away with less of a punishment than Oklahoma State or an equal punishment. I mean, it's just a way that they can get it done as a giant basketball school that has that ability in the legal system as well. I mean, people think, well, what exactly are you talking about? Look at it. It happens everywhere. If you put North Carolina, Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, any of them on notice, they are going to fight you. And Oklahoma State can do all they want to, but not at that level.
Well, a non-blue blood school had punishments and kind of like what OSU's facing because they had 2 athletes that had grades that were falsified or whatever, and they got proof that happened. So when North Carolina finally came down, that basically their entire team didn't even go to class. Some of them had never stepped foot in some of the classes that they had. A year later or 9 months later, whatever it was, the NCAA came out, and I remember their exact statement was, the NCAA is no longer going to be in the business of monitoring academics.
Right.
So as soon as North Carolina did that, we don't care if you go to class or have grades. We don't work. It's not going to be our job to monitor that. And again, the school that had just less than a year earlier gotten the law laid down on them for the exact same thing, only to a lesser degree than North Carolina, is like, hey, well, what about us? You took our scholarships away and whatever. And so anyhow, and again, you don't even want to get me started on Ole Miss's football team and the lack of discipline in that situation.
Sure.
But it's just a history of just doing what they want to whoever, whenever they want, and there's nobody holding them accountable. And we should have, when Florida State in football said, we need to just start our own, just get rid of the NCAA, or just half the teams in the country just leave. They can't do without the schools either. I mean, they may think they're bigger than that, but when all the schools just say, you know what, we're going to start our own athletic association, screw you, bye. Then everybody that works for the NCAA no longer has a job.
Right, yeah, and I
we
think
should have all cut and ran with them.
Right, and it's
10 years ago.
It's a possibility that could definitely happen in the future. I don't think anyone would really be surprised, especially if this type of thing continues to happen to teams. And the NCAA, we all know, we're not naive. They know that it wouldn't bode well for them to have Kansas out of the national tournament. It just wouldn't. It'd be the same with any other top blue blood team you can think of. Now, that's maybe why you have an argument for they reverse the punishment on Oklahoma State, because they realize that this team is good enough to draw enough viewers, the number one player in the country as well, that maybe, just maybe, this year would be the wrong time to keep them out of the tournament. Who knows?
Well, I agree. With the way they focused everything on Trae Young, you would think that now that Cunningham has made that decision, that's already kind of a slap in their face to force their hand to almost say, we'll delay it till next year. Which even if they did that, we're not going to be happy about it.
Right.
It would be better than losing what could be a great season.
Yeah, that's kind of, I've tried to make that argument a little bit as well, is that's maybe what Oklahoma State is doing and hoping, and maybe with Cade saying he's going to come back, it might push the NCAA in a different direction. But they're also hoping that we got to put all of our eggs in one basket and go for it this year. We have to put all the chips on the table for it this year, because it's the 1 year that Cade stays. If the NCAA reverses their decision, then it's even better. If not, we still got to go out there and make a statement while we have the best player in the country, because I got news for everybody. How many times is the best player in the country going to come to Oklahoma State? I mean, let's be honest. Just not. So we have to make that useful while we have that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call. I truly believe that's the case. I mean, that's why it would be so important for the NCAA to ultimately, even if they did push it back for a year, you'd still get that idea where it's like, oh, well, at least we still have this year. We can still use Cade, and we can basically go all out. You know, while we have Cade for 1 year, maybe it takes some growing pains, but, you know, there's going to be some, and that's the thing. If the NCAA ends up reversing the punishment and the Oklahoma State basketball team is able to get into the tournament, the expectations rise so much more. Puts a ton of pressure on that team. Can they do it? Sure. But it's going to take a lot of work. But luckily for Oklahoma State, they have the pieces to get it done. When we come back, Chris Dorado is going to come join us. He'll talk about everything going on with us in NASCAR. That's next.
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better.
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist joining me now. And joining us is Chris Dorado, all the way from Florida. He's been on the show here a few times. We've had plenty of NASCAR news going on during everything else. Chris, how's Florida treating you?
Well, it's very hot down here. So, but the unfortunate part of being down here right now is that the coronavirus cases are rising by the day. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can get a handle on that sooner than later and start knocking them down again.
Yeah, it was, they did a pretty good job overall in terms of everything that they were governing with the coronavirus and all that up to this point. Now, obviously, we're going to have more cases with the restrictions eased and things like that, but we can also agree that it's been pretty toasty over here in Stillwater as well. This whole start of the summer, it has been nuts. NASCAR, though, we have had more NASCAR news and then in the last few, I guess, couple of months, and we have in a long time now. Now, NASCAR, I've given them credit because they were one of those first sports that aggressively tried to make a comeback when it came to the coronavirus pandemic and everything. So far, we'll get into more about everything else in a minute, but so far, have you think they've done a good job with getting races back on the air?
It's been actually nothing short of a miracle, frankly. I mean, you know, there are a lot of moving parts, no pun intended, with getting these races staged and first and foremost scheduled and then staged. So for them to do what they've done so far has been, impressive. And I think more sports should be able to follow what they're trying to accomplish in terms of keeping their teams and drivers and then the players in some of the other sports cases safe. I think that there's a template that some of these other sports can follow.
I haven't seen much of like the precautions that they're taking, whether it's constant testing, quarantining if you come down positive. Like what's kind of been their game plan of just trying to identify and make sure that there's not a spread especially within the garages themselves?
I know for a fact that everybody has to have their temperature taken prior to entering the facility, so that right away tells you a little bit of what's going on with somebody's health. So, and of course, I think there are some tests that are taken prior to coming to the track. So, they aggressively make sure that their participants and all the staff that has to enter the facility, they're healthy and of course not spreading the virus at the same time if they're showing some symptoms.
Chris Dorado joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Been long involved with auto racing. Chris, what was your initial response to NASCAR saying they are banning the Confederate flag? I mean, I know that has great offense to many people, but at the same time, it was also like one of those symbols of NASCAR too. So, what did you think of that?
Well, I thought it was a very wise and terrific move on their part. Probably long overdue, frankly. And, of course, the primary mover and shaker behind that was Bubba Wallace, who we all felt bad for yesterday prior to the race at Talladega. Everybody heard about that despicable situation that occurred in his garage stall with the noose hanging there, and the show of support from all the competitors and the team members and his team owner yesterday, Richard Petty. That was just a moving moment. So I think NASCAR is being very, very wise in what they're doing. And like I said, it's probably long overdue. They should have put their foot down a long time ago, Frank.
Well, you brought up the Sunday's incident with the noose, and obviously I've seen far too many people basically saying that it was planted by Bubba or somebody in his garage, and I guess I know for a fact that the drivers aren't allowed in the garage during rain delays and whatnot. In a normal circumstance, and again, it may be even more strenuous right now because of the pandemic, but during a rain delay, I mean, who's actually allowed access to the garages especially when it's such a long rain delay as they had Sunday?
Well, I can only attest to the fact that when I was traveling the circuit, the NASCAR garage area in the best of times is a completely secure area. When practices and qualifying are over on a given Saturday, for example, all the teams are required to leave the garage area. So it becomes a lockdown situation. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the investigation unfolds. I guess the FBI is involved, from what I've read, and it'll like you said, it's not the easiest place to gain access to in the best of times, no less when there's a pandemic. And in a rain delay scenario, many of the team members retreat to cover, obviously, and certainly in the driver's case, if they have their motorhomes that they go back to. So, it'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds. But during this time, there's a select number of people that have access to the garage area. So, I'm sure they'll be able to identify what took place.
Yeah. Well, Chris, with that being the case, and also maybe you can speak to this, what type of surveillance maybe goes on with all those garages and everything? I feel like that's kind of what I had talked about with the caller earlier. My only skepticism from the whole thing, not saying Bubba Wallace is lying or anything like that, but where would the maybe like video evidence, photo evidence, wouldn't something come up from that? Maybe NASCAR hasn't released it yet. What do you think about that?
Well, there could be video evidence. I'm not sure, but I know that again in these garage areas, there's security, roaming the grounds at all times, whether it be overnight or even during the during the times when there's practices, and in this case they didn't have any practice, but when the teams are congregated at the venue, there's security, so they're going to be able to do a lot of interviews with people, and if there is security camera footage somewhere, which I'm confident there probably is. I mean, many of these tracks now, some of them while they're aged, they have the newest and greatest technology for footage. So I would think that they'll be able to look at that and identify what took place.
Well, and with that, I mean, it sounds like no matter who did it, it had to have been someone that would be allowed access, essentially. So it has to be someone truly within NASCAR, not the possibility of a media person or a fan or whatever, because obviously fans weren't even allowed in the inside the tracks. I mean, when NASCAR comes out and says whoever it is does not have a place in NASCAR, they're making it obvious that they feel that it is likely someone with ties, whether it's within a team or someone who works for the track, that they believe that someone who has actual ties to NASCAR is probably like the culprit, right?
Well, and again, the fact that there aren't any fans roaming the grounds, and again, the best of times, the fans do have access, or a select group of fans have access to the garage area. But in this case, it's just the internal folks, shall we say. So, and it would include, you bring up a valid point. It's not only the teams and folks that are working for the teams and management, but it's also the track personnel that are assigned to the garage area. So they're going to have to look at that group of folks as well.
Chris Dorado joined us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. What did you think about that finish yesterday? I guess it was actually last night when it all came down to a finish, but what did you think of that?
Well, you're asking the wrong person, because I was rooting for Ricky Stenhouse Jr., to be perfectly honest with you. He's actually his crew chief, Brian Patty, is a friend of my in-laws, and he grew up with my brother-in-law on the west coast of Florida. So I was a little partial to Ricky Stenhouse in the 47 car winning, but that's the kind of racing you want to see, guys. I mean, some of these races, quite frankly, can be rather boring. One of them's coming up here on the July 4th weekend in Indianapolis, and actually Pocono at times can be a little boring, although they'll beat bang there a little bit. But Talladega traditionally has that kind of racing, and it was refreshing to see, and I'm sure that opened up some eyes to some racing fans that may not have been wanting to tune in yesterday, but the plate racing, as they call it, is always exciting, whether it's at Daytona or Talladega.
What were your feelings pre-race when you saw everything? The drivers and the crews coming together behind Bubba Wallace. Obviously, Richard Petty making an appearance at the race for the first time during the pandemic as well.
It was, again, I think I mentioned it. It was a moving moment. I mean, to see that kind of support for Bubba was terrific. I think it was definitely handled by Fox Sports. I thought that was a really touching moment there, and the fact that you could see Bubba break down emotionally like he did, it brought a tear to your eye as a fan. So he's had to endure a lot over the last couple of weeks, and to his credit, he's capably handling it and representing his sport in the best manner possible.
Well, and it feels like NASCAR's obviously behind him, because it's also, while obviously the diehard long-term fans, maybe some of them have been disgruntled by it, it's also opening up the doors to a new fan base. I mean, I remember seeing, I think it was Alvin Kamara, the running back for the Saints, went to the first race. I know in the post-race last night, they had people saying that they came all the way from Atlanta just to watch Bubba Wallace race. I mean, while some people in the sport, fans, are wanting to keep the rebel flag and all this stuff, it also is allowing the sport to almost grow to a new niche of fans.
And that's the idea that Bubba's been trying to put forth here in all his remarks, that this is an all-inclusive sport. No matter what race you are, no matter what gender you are, they welcome every fan. So and that's the idea behind NASCAR and what they do. They're an all-American sport, and they like to they don't exclude anybody. So I think and it's probably true that this has brought in a different base of fans, and I think you're going when the fans do congregate in the stands en masse again, which will be soon, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I think you're gonna see an expansion of the demographics.
Well, and that's the thing I think that's made NASCAR so great over the years is there was always somebody like that who is a little bit different than the Southern drivers and whatnot. I go back to a guy like Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson. They kind of elevated the interest in the sport because they were the California kids and stuff like that, and it started growing that way as well. So, I mean, that's been the great thing about the sport is you get the right driver along, and they have been able to create a way to expand the sport beyond just it's kind of its Southern roots.
And that's true. And Jeff Gordon pretty much brought NASCAR to Madison Avenue, if you will, in New York, with all his corporate backing as well as his image. And but now you have the drivers coming from all areas of the country. Martin Truex Jr., for example, he's from my home state in New Jersey. So. They're not the traditional Southern boys that are showing up every Sunday.
Chris Dorado joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Last thing here for you, Chris. How do you think the experience was for the fans, kind of for the first time, really anywhere, with NASCAR returning yesterday, with that opportunity for them, as well as I believe we talked about 30,000 planning on attending the race at Bristol? Well,
the All-Star race will be a very big test. They're gonna draw upwards of 30,000 there, and that'll be I think college football and as well as the NFL should be taking a good look on how that's going to be handled. That Bristol Motor Speedway is pretty much like a football stadium for all intents and purposes, and so how they operate there in a facility like that speedway. I think the football folks should be taking a good look at that and seeing how that's handled. That speedway holds upwards of 100,000 under normal circumstances. I've been there when it's been packed. So 30,000 will be a bit scattered around, but that will be typical of what might be happening in college football and the NFL come the fall.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. A lot of eyes will be on that race to see how everything works out as well afterwards with everyone being there. Chris Dorado joined us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Chris, thanks so much for taking some of your time out today. Enjoy Florida. Hopefully everything stays, calms down a little bit over there. Stay safe.
You as well over there, and make sure you keep my brother in line when you see him next.
Hey, we always do. It's sort of an impossible task, but we do our best.
Well, I hope so. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Chris, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Chris Dorado joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. I love his perspective on everything NASCAR. It has been in the news a ton as of, like I said, these past couple of months. I remember Bubba Wallace was, if you remember correctly, during the iRacing and all that, he was he rage quit that one race. He was the one that got so mad. I remember his name. I'm like, I've heard Bubba Wallace. I wasn't super in tune with NASCAR. Like, he was the one that rage quit that one match at iRacing and lost his sponsor because of it. So, yeah, he's been in the news more than once, obviously, before all this as well. But now, with everything going on, which this is a developing story, obviously, we'll try to keep up with it as much as possible. When we come back to round out the first hour, you won't believe what one town says they will lose financially if there's no college football season. We'll tell you that next.
I don't wanna
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive. Wrapping up hour number one here on Tuesday. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you. Chris Dorado just joined us in the last segment. He was great as always. It was funny. I was out there. Jordan goes, "Who you got on the show today?" I said, "Chris Dorado's come on." I said, "Without Tom?" I said, "Yeah, we don't need Tom. Chris come on before without him. He's
Yeah, Tom only likes to talk to Chris Hunt, not Chris Dorado.
yeah. Not his brother. Come on. Yeah, he's great. He gives us a ton of.
Well, let's be honest. It's because Tom knows nothing about NASCAR, and he's admitted that. I'm not. I'm not throwing him under the bus.
He has, yeah. And I'll admit I've learned more about it in the last few months than I ever thought I would too, because it's never held a ton of my interest. But I have been more interested in just the fact that it was one of those first sports to really try to aggressively make a comeback. So
no, I covered back when I was a part-timer in college at the Lawrence paper. I covered it was either 2 or 3 NASCAR races. I think it was 2 NASCAR races, 2 truck races, 2 IndyCar races up at Kansas Speedway, and so I've followed it growing up and whatnot. You know, I actually remember watching when Earnhardt Sr. died in the crash at Daytona. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't watched it probably that much over the past 10 years, but I still kind of follow along, see hits here and there.
Exactly.
But no, I mean, it's. You know, it is one of those sports, you know, everyone gives it grief because, it's not much of a sport. You just turn left. It's like, yeah, but if you actually knew what those guys driving, what they do, you know, the skill that you have to for his crew to be able to do all this, you know, sliding across cars to replace tires and all this. I mean, these are finely tuned athletes who are having to use finely tuned cars to succeed. So, I mean, it is. I mean, they don't get enough credit for them being athletes. But again, when you're essentially, imagine trying to run a marathon, basically, but you're in a confined space with no wiggle room, and you're not running, but you're still pushing and using your arms as just as much. I mean, it is crazy what they have to do.
It takes a talented person to do that, no doubt,
and a crazy person.
Well, both. Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, as we saw at the end of the race last night, anything can happen, and you know, fortunately, over the past few years, we've seen there's been a lot of improvements in safety and stuff like that. So you haven't seen as many tragedies as there was in the past. But I mean, there's still always that danger of you never know when you're going 150, 160 miles per hour, going side by side, bumping each other. Anything can happen.
Well, people could say the same thing about football too. They're crazy people going out there and bashing into each other as hard as they do.
Oh, especially if you're a return man.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, that would be the one. If I had to choose, they said, look, go out there and then be a punt returner. I'd be like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
Yeah.
Speaking of football, this is football, man. Alabama, the Tuscaloosa mayor was on a news station yesterday and said that he projects Tuscaloosa would lose $2 billion if there was not a football season. $1 billion with a B. And I think that kind of puts it into perspective for some people just how much money college football does generate. Now, we are talking about Alabama, but when you look at big-time college football towns, I mean, you can talk to Stillwater here. It's like, it's such a, I know we brought this up a bunch, but that number right there is crazy.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me they're not going to find a way to have some sort of a football season, not saying it's going to be normal by any means, but some sort, okay?
Yeah.
And even if you can't have fans in the stands, where you're still going to have gatherings of people in bars that are open or restaurants that are open or whatever downtown and in any college football town, that's going to help. Even if it wouldn't be like at its maximum level, it's still going to help some businesses that otherwise might be in serious danger without it.
Oh yeah. I mean, even for a smaller community like Stillwater, you got to think about, obviously hotel rooms, meals for, I mean, because that's the thing is most people who are coming in, you're probably driving in the night before, maybe especially if it's like a 1 o'clock game, maybe even staying for Friday night. But so not only hotel stays, well, then you also got to find food. You're probably going to tailgate maybe, but you're not going to Friday night. You're not going to be able to necessarily tailgate outside of Boone Pickens Stadium. So you got that. I know a lot of people who bring in RVs and whatnot, and stay at RV parks.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 or 3 around the Stillwater area that people just basically rent a plot out for that weekend. I know, again, friend of the station, Jeff Hopper, his brother, they basically own a house here in Stillwater. They live over in Arkansas, and they actually, rent it out and whatnot if they're not going to be over here for the game, but otherwise they stay there. But that's, Airbnbs, people rely on, OSU fans coming in and maybe skipping out of the hotel and going to a house instead if you have a big family. So, there's so much money that comes through. And again, that's why, yes, Gundy was accurate in what he was saying, but when he basically says, so be it if our athletes get this illness, we got to get the money going. It just came off insensitive what he was saying at that moment, but he's accurate. Without football, I know, especially down around the campus, the corner there, where you have Hideaway and Rhinestone Cowgirl and all that stuff. They rely heavily on those weekends because people are, the foot traffic coming past and popping in there before games.
And then that's why you put it into perspective here at Stillwater. And imagine a consistently top tier program like Alabama. They topped it out.
Bigger stadium as well.
$125 million a game comes in. A game.
Yeah.
And it's really so that's why that they're going to, and there was never really a doubt based on that right there, because when you look at how bad the economy is taking a hit as a whole anyways, if they didn't have money flowing into some of these economies, we would see places shut down for good, and that's not good long-term for anybody.
Yeah.
So they're going to find a way to at least have some sort of stimulation back with a college football season. I saw a point brought up today, and does this maybe make a little bit more sense? Maybe so, because if they plan on starting on time, will they ultimately find a way to even get like bowl games in, for instance, or would it make more sense to cut the season short and only do conference championships and then the playoff? All of a sudden, we also might have a legitimate argument now for only 4 teams in the playoff. It might actually work out in everyone's favor this year with less risk, with less teams.
Right.
Never been a fan of it before, but maybe now it'll work out. But that's definitely something that could happen too. So either way, I'm still saying we're definitely going to have college football, but it will be, and I say this word can be taken to everyone, but very unconventional. That's that's bottom line. It's not going to be the same. A lot of restrictions. We may or may not have fans. Even if not, though, I think towns that host these big schools and these big name football programs, they're going to be okay because, let's face it, fans when it comes to college football.
Yeah, but at the same time, it will be affected if you don't have people in the stands, because again, for example, for Stillwater, they get people who come in from Tulsa, people who come in from Dallas, Oklahoma City, obviously areas like that. Well, are they necessarily going to drive into Stillwater just to go to watch at a bar when they can stay at home now and watch it there, since they're not allowed to go into the stadium?
Probably not as many. I bet there would be some that definitely would come back.
You may get people in Stillwater, the immediate area who probably might still go out to. But at the same time, if you have, if it's like on, Fox News or ESPN News or something like that, then maybe you go out to the bar because you don't have that channel.
Right.
But if it's on, ABC or ESPN, most people get those at home. I don't know if it'll necessarily have that big of an impact in the community as we might think, because why go out to the bar, especially if they're limiting who can go out to the stadium. It's like, well, if you're limiting that, why should I not consider limiting my access or my exposure in the public?
Yeah, if anything, they would be hoping for the town itself to make it a day to come out and spend money. Maybe less than visitors, but yeah, it's not going to be the same for anybody. But maybe they will end up having a chance to have a fighting chance here with all of this. When we come back, Major League Baseball might just happen. We'll talk about that in hour number 2.
Now I hit the scene, they like lights, camera, action. Living in a dream, now my music, they be blasting. Step out, I'm a star, always in the latest fashion. Had to set the bar, tried to catch me lacking. Bank account for my son, he won't have to struggle. You can see it in my eyes, all I do is hustle. They tried to knock me off my feet, I'm ready to rumble. Felt like I ain't ate in weeks, working off the muscle. Oh yeah, oh my, we ride for my brothers, no lie. Never wrong, they right, I ain't changing my side.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, hour number 2. Patrick Wheeler, Jason Elmquist with you here on Tuesday. listening on 1020 AM, 1580 AM, 105.1, 93.1 FM, Triple Play Sports Radio app, tripleplaysportsradio.com. Multiple ways to hear us. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit here. Before we get into Major League Baseball, OSU did announce that they are canceling their fan day. I'm sure that's a big celebration every year.
Yeah, I had already pretty much knew it was going to happen. I don't know if I mentioned on radio or when talking with Jimmy Gillespie over the news press, but because you have the interaction between fans and players, typically you're allowed to get, you're getting autographs from lines of players, and it is, I typically see hundreds of thousands of people show up to Gallagher-Iba to get those autographs, and it's football players and soccer players that they're usually getting autographs from. And with all this trying to sequester and quarantine the athletes, I knew this was eventually going to come to this point, but they officially announced it. The interesting thing, though, from a media standpoint, that same day is usually when they have the big media day for football, where we get to talk to, usually there's upwards of 20 to 30 players made available that we're, getting photos of them, doing stories, talking to them, all this, and, and the media's, usually 20 to 30 or more people just from the media standpoint that are, obviously last year it was everyone was surrounding Spencer Sanders and Drew Brown and everything like that. So that's now, from a media standpoint, I'm curious if they've already canceled the fan thing. Are they either going to limit the media day, or are they going to cancel it altogether? How are they going to try to do that if you're wanting to try to prevent the spread to your athletes, so you don't have a change in the season? But also, that's a time where media is getting stories to get out to fans that wanted to know what's coming up this season.
At what point in this upcoming season, does Chuba Hubbard or Mike Gundy go, okay, I'm done answering questions about what happened? Because I feel like that
Gundy probably pretty early. It may be before the season starts.
I'm thinking Chuba might even go that way too, just because of but maybe
I could see him getting away from Gundy specifically, the shirt, but still saying, hey, we're still wanting change. Yeah. I think he's still going to, because as he said, even following the initial stuff on Monday, was, I'm not backing down. He still wants to see change. So I think he's still going to use his platforms to be able to do that. But I think as far as talking about Gundy specifically or that shirt specifically, I think he will not talk about it during the season. But if it's asking stuff like, hey, are you seeing the changes that you guys wanted, by week 2 or week 3, if people are asking that, I don't think he's necessarily going to shy away from it.
And maybe not even him, but other players too, because and definitely during the season. If they have a game where Oklahoma State puts up 42 points and explodes offensively, and the first question is, how are you and Mike Gundy doing? Do you think Chuba's going to be like, what about my 200 yards I just put up on the field and all that too? So maybe that's why I think there's going to be some balance. But when national media gets a crack at it too, maybe some local, they're going to press that issue and try to get more out of them. And I could definitely see some players on the team being like, I'm talking football, okay? Talking what we just did out there on the field.
Yeah.
So is it going to become, I don't know, annoying for some people? Sure, but it's something that too you don't want it to die down. You want change to happen if that's what they want, but at the same time you're also like, let's talk some football. Major League Baseball, yesterday we said that they were going to vote around 5 o'clock. They ended up getting a vote in about 5:15ish, right after we got off the air. And we knew basically what was going to happen. Major League Baseball said no to the proposal or the players did from MLB with 60 games and all of that. Then they come back and say, well, the owners, we're gonna implement this 60-game season based off 2 things. One, if Major League Baseball players can report to team facilities by July 1st,
right?
And the other one was if they adhere to and are able to agree upon all of the health procedures and everything put in place by the handbook for the coronavirus and all that. It's expected that they believe players will do both of those things and be ready to go, because as most of them have said, we want a win and wear situation. We're ready to play and go out there. And then, well, Rob Manfred gave them a win and wear.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the next step is once they're voting on that, by the way, today. I think they wanted an answer, even they said by 5 o'clock Eastern. So hopefully sometime around here we can see if we get some news before we get off there if they're officially going to go for it.
Right.
So but it looks like right now we're going to have some sort of a season barring, and the only thing I think that would stop it would be some major coronavirus mess, which looks like right now we're probably going to be able to get through with it.
Well, I mean, but at the same time, we also know of several organizations that have actually shut down their training facilities right now. I believe it was the Mets and the Reds, I think it was. Blue Jays I know have as well. I mean,
Phillies,
Phillies. That's what it was. Have shut down their spring training facilities because of COVID-19 scare. So that's the thing. Is like you can try all you want, but if these facilities and these organizations, whether it's the college or pro level, and again, we're seeing it even at the high school level, just down the road, Perkins Tryon shut down their summer workouts for all sports for a month because one person who had ties to the athletics department tested positive. So I mean, if they show up, everyone shows up to their spring training facilities July 1 and July 2nd, most of them have 4 or 5 guys testing positive. Do they shut down? That's what's going to be interesting is if these organizations decide to shut down because of the possibility of their facility becoming a hotspot.
I don't think they would shut down unless something. I'm talking a big number. I know that we're always talking about what number would it be, but I think they're right now with the actual movement of getting to a season, which is about as close as we've been during this whole mess. They're gonna, and here's the thing too. They shut down every facility for a deep cleaning, is what they said.
Right.
That's gonna have to become more like of a norm. If you're gonna spend money on something, it's gonna have to be that, to where you do prevent things like that from happening. I wonder how much players and maybe even owners are thinking, wow, we maybe missed an opportunity. Remember when Arizona and Florida said, come play in these bubbles? Because how far that was back in May or before that even.
Yeah.
If they had done that and we were a month through the season already, maybe a less chance of outbreaks when you're sitting in a bubble too.
Right.
I wonder how much they're looking back on that and saying we whiffed because there are plenty of opportunities they could have had to get a season started. It's hard to determine winners and losers in this deal. I think they both are a little bit of both. Both won and both lost, talking to the owners and the players. The losers in this situation when it comes to the players, well, they end up getting the same amount of games that they declined. They declined that 60-game proposal by Major League Baseball and then are going to get 60 games anyways. And the loss here is that they're going to blow an opportunity to 50-50 split for that expanded postseason because there's not going to be an expanded postseason now. You're still going to have 10 teams instead of 16. And the universal designated hitter, I think that's still planning on being part of the game. I have to double-check that to be sure. But they are going to get their prorated pay. I think if Major League Baseball players, if you were asking them, they said, hey, we won because we're going to get prorated pay here. Now, the owners got probably the least amount of games possible. There was at one time that talk of Rob Manfred said, I'm just going to implement a 48-game season. And they would have been fine with that because of less games. But 60 games, that's probably where the owners will win a little bit out.
Well, and from what it sounds like is a lot of players actually are, because the vote from the union last night was from their leadership.
Yes.
And I think it was a 33-5 vote. It wasn't, all the players. And I've seen a lot of players that are actually upset by the leadership by not agreeing to it. The one I saw most notable, Trevor Bauer, an all-star pitcher for the Reds right now, said it's absolute death for this industry to keep acting as it has been. Both sides. We're driving the bus straight off a cliff. How is this good for anyone involved? COVID-19 already presented a lose-lose-lose situation, and we've somehow found a way to make it worse. Incredible. Facepalm.
I mean, he's right about he's right about what the industry has done to itself, because it has done some serious damage with all this, even with possibly starting the season. They've messed up big time. Yeah, but at the same time, when he's talking about with the coronavirus and everything, I don't know. I think if you still are able to get some games in and in a safe way, then to me, I don't really see how that's a loss. I guess I can see where he's talking about. I mean, we're talking about a 60-game season here, so for some players, that's obviously not going to get it done, especially when you look at the amount of money that some of these players are going to end up making. You'll get the Mike Trouts that will make $14 million still in the season, but some of these guys making the league minimum, I don't know, do they necessarily feel the same in this situation? The other part of it, too, that's why I think the players, if they probably have to not feel so good about not hitting on this expanded playoffs. Because if they could have had 16 teams, that's over 150 more players alone that would be in the playoffs.
Right.
And when that's not being the case and you've got your normal 10, that to me is where, and you mentioned that they had I think there's like even a subcommittee and like all that's voting on that. We're not sitting here talking about it. There's a representative from each team, but not like players are just sitting there like voting like some people might think. They have representatives. There had already been discussion that people were really upset with Tony Clark anyways for when he went and apparently talked to Rob Manfred because it wasn't what they wanted him to do and talk about. So that's been the biggest deal with all this is the miscommunication has been absolutely atrocious to see. It's like, I mean, we can see little kids communicate better than what we saw owners and players here. Now, people are like, well, they can't get together for the coronavirus. They have been able that just could do just as much over a Zoom conference. Okay, I really truly believe or an email.
Yeah,
bottom line, this took way too long, and did the result make a lot of people happy? Probably not. There's going to be some people as fans that we went out maybe, but not for everybody because with a shortened season. In 60 games and 10 teams coming in the postseason, you better hope you have a contender. You better hope you're a fan of a contender because there are going to be some teams we know it takes 60 games to get going in a regular season. So not everyone, from a fan perspective, is going to win. They'll get to see some baseball, but postseason baseball, you might be crossing your fingers still in this situation.
And I saw a tweet this afternoon that really put it into perspective. The last Royals game to have been played was managed by Ned Yost. And it feels like that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it does.
Like,
it really
think about that. I mean, technically the Royals have not, they have a new manager, Matheny.
Yeah.
And it feels like he's been the manager for that team for a couple years now, and he hasn't even managed a game yet for the Royals.
That's true.
That's crazy to think.
It really is. Yeah, Ned Yost. Wow.
Right? I remember we forget that it hasn't even been a year since he retired.
I remember meeting him a couple years ago, and a lot of the questions at that time from the panel were, "Oh my gosh, you let everybody go. This team was poised to win and all this," and he gave his traditional Ned Yost backfire, which was great to see. But yeah, and that's the thing. Teams like the Royals that are still trying to get back to where they were. I don't know how, and then maybe they see it as an advantage, like, hey, everyone's kind of still on an even playing field here with 60 games. It's going to be wide open in a lot of divisions. I mean, St. Louis and the Central is going to be wide open in the NL. I know that. So it's going to be that case for a lot of teams.
We need to find out, we need to look back to like the last couple of years and figure out where teams were at after the first 60.
Exactly.
To see, how much of a difference those extra 90 games are.
Yeah.
To see if, because I mean, there's been instances, because again, I know I've talking with you the fact that over the last 10 years, the Cardinals, there have been times where come July 1, they're well out of the playoff picture, and then ultimately make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That's not going to work for these franchises this year. I mean, you're going to have to win, be top of your game in 60 games. You're not going to be allowed the whole slate to figure out things or overcome injuries and stuff like that. And so that may be enough to just instantly knock you out of the playoffs.
It could even be less than that. I mean, you could lose. We've seen teams go on 7, 8, 10 game losing streaks, and they've been able to bounce back. Well, it's not going to be the case with this season, and I do hope that all Major League players did their best in terms of training and everything like that, because they want to start this season July 24th. That's a month from tomorrow. We're talking about them reporting in a couple of weeks on July 1st.
Yeah.
It's not like they have
a week.
Yeah, a week, yeah.
A week from tomorrow is when they're supposed to report according to the MLB.
It's not like they have a huge amount of time to prepare here. This is, we got to turn it around, and that's why you're going to see some teams that come out of the gate might not have shot. I mean, really, let's be honest. That's the joys of a 182 game season, is because, like you said, and St. Louis is a great example, you can see plenty of teams that are completely different when it comes after 60 games. players on the team are different a lot of times. Lineups are different. Pitching rotations are different.
I'm curious if they're going to have, because one of the most exciting things in the summer is trade deadline. Sometimes you have a good summer and you get a little flurry there. Sometimes you don't. But are they going to have that? Are people going to be willing to give up stock for just 10 games of a player type of situation, or for a pitcher, where in previous years you knew you were getting at least 2 months and then the postseason, hopefully.
The timeline on this also is just it makes you kind of want to throw up a little bit. At least me. I'm not going to be honest. I am going to be honest. I'm looking at this and seeing all the different numbers of games on the proposals. Remember, Major League Baseball wanted 114. The players did. Then they wanted 89. The owners were like, no, 70, 60. We're going to do 40. I mean, it just – and then on top of that, this past weekend was the back and forth on, well, us as players, we're going to vote, and then we're not going to vote, and then we are going to go vote. And it's just been back and forth. The communication has been brutal. But bottom line, like Jason said, if they can navigate this coronavirus mess – we might end up having some sort of Major League Baseball, some sort of a season. That's the thing, too. We got to remember, I mean, they never got it started. Spring training was as far as they got. So they kind of drew the short straw with all of this.
I'm actually trying to get back. Unfortunately, the website's a little slow, but I'm trying to get to approximately where this time, through 60 games last year, what the standings would have looked like. Approximately, and this is about we're right about 61. You're looking at last year through 60 games, Yankees, Twins, Astros all leading their division, Phillies, Cubs, and Dodgers all leading theirs. Well, I guess it was Cubs and Brewers actually tied. I think that's ultimately how things ultimately panned out, if I remember right.
Yeah, for most teams, obviously St. Louis was able to make a run there in the Central. It's that's the thing. Is I think also you're going to see who some of the best managers are in Major League Baseball. What they can do with 60 games is going to show how well they can rally a team. And I think that's been one of the things we brought up with every sport is we're going to see leadership.
Yeah,
in
actually, again, going back, I went and found the final standings. Ultimately, the Phillies, again, were leading their division through 60 games. They finished at 500 and finished fourth in their division. Again, Chicago ultimately finished well behind. St. Louis was third in their division. So, I mean, there was a couple teams, Atlanta being one, St. Louis being one, at least in the NL, that having a full season actually benefited them. So, I think if you go back to last year through 60 games, there was a definite shift in the final run up to the playoffs. So that'll be the interesting thing is those teams are going to be afforded that opportunity.
Think about now where we'd be in Major League Baseball in a normal season, somewhat near an All-Star break. I mean, about a month away, a little less than a month. That's when teams that are struggling finally get that break. And we've seen teams come out of the All-Star break just scorching hot because they get a stoppage in play.
You want to know the craziest thing?
Yeah.
Through 60 games last year, the team that won the World Series last year was fourth in their division with a 28-34 record.
Man, the Washington Nationals were
hot late in the season.
Yeah,
and that's I say it every single postseason for every sport. Sometimes it's not the best team, sometimes it's just the hottest team. And it's crazy to think right now that we're looking at a 60-game schedule, that the team that won the World Series last year would not have been in the playoffs if they cut it off at 60. I mean, they would have been, even if you expanded it to the 12 teams like they were potentially going to do this year, they still wouldn't have even made it into that playoff.
See, that's why I think with no expanded playoffs, also you're going to have those teams that say, well, this whoever wins this World Series this year, I mean, who could really tell who was going to be the real winner? Well, you got to deal with it this way as it comes. I would have liked to see some sort of expanded playoffs, maybe a couple of teams. Now, 16, you're going to get some teams that definitely probably don't deserve an opportunity to be in the postseason. A couple teams' difference wouldn't have been that bad, though. I'm fine with it the way that it is. I'm just happy that we are seeing some sort of baseball maybe returning before it's all said and done. and get a chance to watch your favorite team at least make a run for it with 60 games. When we come back, a ton of stuff going on in the NFL. We'll dive into all of that and look at some other things going on around the college football world. We'll get into that as well. Still to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
She like my futuristic sounds in the new spaceship. Futuristic if a Philip cake. She never need a man, she what a man need. So I keep on falling for her daily. We was at Coachella going crazy. Stack a couple M's like I was shady. Now I'm in Tribeca like I'm Jay-Z. Rockin' Sorayama like he pay me.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you. On Tuesday, haven't got a chance to talk a lot of NFL lately, but there has been a lot of little stories popping up here and there. The biggest one probably so far, Dak Prescott is going to sign his franchise tender with the Cowboys, putting him at a $31.4 million salary. And they have until July 15th to get this deal done. It's gonna get done. I think that the Cowboys, though, they gotta budge on the years. If they want to keep Dak Prescott, he doesn't want to stick around for 5 years. And I don't really blame him, but what he's asking for 4 years is obviously crazy money.
Yeah.
And that's the question, is the Cowboys, will they ultimately bend to keep him around at that time? I think there's been a lot of people that had said, you know what, he might not even make it through a full season. I mean, let's be honest. With them bringing in Andy Dalton, people, I guess, Andy Dalton, I think it's a legitimate threat. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback, but come on. How long would it take? I think it would obviously have to take 3 or 4 losses maybe in a row. Maybe not that many, but 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And something would have to be done in that situation. So is he overpaid? Yeah, absolutely. I think and is he going to be? I think so too. But 4 to 5 years, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't blame him not wanting 5 years. He needs to test the market again.
Right. And I've said the same thing about Patrick Mahomes. His agent isn't going to push for the Chiefs probably want to lock him in for 6 or 7 years. But the smart thing is the value of you as a player is going to increase over the years if you continue on your trajectory, and if based on how the inflation of the salary cap increases every year. So it makes sense to only want to go shoot for around 4 years on your contract, because keep in mind that means after 3 years you can start negotiating for a restructure, for an extension and stuff like that. And if in 3 years you've actually won some playoff games, Dak Prescott, then you have that argument to say, hey, let's do it. Let's do maybe a little bit longer extension. But again, I know that's the tough thing is, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, maybe you say this is a prove it season, on the contract. But at the same time, if he hits, either he can walk away from you, or he could mandate even more money than if you didn't make a deal right now.
Yeah, and it's going to depend, like you kind of said, on the ultimate success. I do believe this is a you got to get it done type season with all the pieces in place. With Zeke still there, with Amari Cooper healthy, with CeeDee Lamb being added, with Dak being Dak, but also a brand new head coach. And if they do happen to swoop up Jamal Adams, which is looking like a possibility, they're doing everything they can to have Dak succeed. It's going to be on him.
Right, yeah, because, I mean, you can brush aside the one excuse that a lot of Cowboys fans have been making over the last 2 years of the fact that it was head coach. The play calling and all that.
That's going to be huge.
Is what kept you back. If the change of head coach, you don't see an improvement in the ability of that offense, then you start questioning, where is it that's faltering? And Ezekiel Elliott putting up, close to 2,000 yards a season, it's hard to pin it on him. And thus, and again, you have all-pro offensive linemen. It's hard to pin it on them. That's why, again, is Dak an elite quarterback? No. Is he worth being a starting quarterback? Yes. Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
But last year proved to me, even in the worst division of all divisions, he couldn't make the playoffs.
There was no excuse last year besides the head coach, and even in that situation, we've seen teams with bad head coaches get it done. So the head coach doesn't sit on the sideline when he should be on the field for the final one of the biggest plays like you had with Amari Cooper. There's no excuse
against Philadelphia. No, it's a case where I've said it for years that Jason Garrett isn't a great coach, but at the same time, we've I mean, you can even look back because you had a lot of talent when Romo was the quarterback. So maybe it is the head coach. But at the same time, if you're a great quarterback, you can overcome your coach saying, "Hey, I want to run this." If you're great enough to say, "Hey," or as we saw in the Super Bowl, where you're a great enough quarterback that you can walk up to your offensive coordinator and say, "Hey, do we have time to run this play?" And it ends up being the greatest play of the Super Bowl.
Look at Deshaun Watson. He has an incompetent head coach, and he still found a way into the playoffs.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you can go anywhere with it.
And that was without a running back.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, nobody.
Texans didn't have a running back.
No.
And their defense was, I would put it right up there with Dallas last year. Dallas had a pretty good defense. Dallas just didn't have any offense.
Right. And that's why people were scratching their heads. They're like, why do we not, though? And that's the thing. With these players who they've added, with Zeke hopefully being healthy. I mean, he did test positive for the coronavirus. We hadn't talked about that. They really have no excuse to not get it done. Let's talk about Zeke real quick because, he did test positive. I think he was probably the biggest name. They said a healthy number of, no pun intended there, healthy number of players of Texans and Cowboys both tested positive, which, I'm not hugely surprised. But, I mean, is anybody surprised that Ezekiel Elliott tested positive for the coronavirus? We have to remember this is the guy that was partying it up, by the way, with Dak Prescott in the height of this pandemic. You remember that story that came out back in like March, I think it was. Everyone was supposed to be shut down, and they're having a huge party.
Yep.
And then denied it, of course. But so I think
they denied it. It wasn't that.
Oh, it wasn't
people.
that big. That's right.
We had it, but it wasn't more than 10 people.
We were
no. You can count on the video that it was more than 20.
Oh, I think the excuse was it was a dinner party. It wasn't an actual party. Yeah. Zeke Elliott was there. It wasn't a dinner party. That's the thing, too, is I wonder how much more, I think the Cowboys are willing to put up a lot with Zeke. They've proven that. So much so that, I mean, it's one of those cases where, like, we have so much talent here that our leniency with him stretches far beyond what it might for a lot of players. Whether that means him going out there and basically just ignoring all protocols during a pandemic and coming back and testing positive, whatever, all this, he's still our guy, but that's just how it is in the NFL. So the Cowboys, they have a real shot, but I think success needs to come pretty early next year. This is interesting. Antonio Brown has apparently gathered a ton of interest from the Seattle Seahawks and the Baltimore Ravens, so much so that the Seahawks are, quote, absolutely interested, unquote, in Antonio Brown. Here's the thing. This is one of those situations where his talent might just outweigh his baggage. That doesn't happen for a lot of players. You have to be uber talented to outweigh issues like Antonio Brown has. Now, we have to remember, I think he's not even technically have been reinstated back into the league, I don't think. So if that and when that happens, then he might have a shot. Do you see him making a roster? Let's say the NFL says, come back. You can come back. Does he make a roster in 2020? Do the Seahawks take a legitimate chance after seeing what happened with the Raiders and the Patriots? Because there was a time where I said...
They tried to sign him last year. Or no, it was Josh Gordon that they signed.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I could see them doing it. I feel that they have a manageable number one in Lockett, but
arguably DK Metcalf as well. That dude is crazy talented.
Yeah, but both of them. So, I mean, is it worth that? I think that's the biggest thing you have to keep in mind, especially in Seattle, where everything. It sounds like they've got a solid locker room put together, of possibly disrupting it with you don't know what's walking in.
And yeah, we saw with the Patriots, it was like, okay, Antonio Brown with Tom Brady, this could be fireworks. We had to remember Tom Brady at his age. How about Antonio Brown with Russell Wilson? Now that really could be something special if Antonio Brown were able to keep it together off the field. But he has proven so many times he's just not all right upstairs. I mean, there's clearly something wrong. It was really, I'll never forget, I saw that video. Someone had put side-by-side video of him when he was with the Steelers at one point, was talking to a reporter about just a normal question that they would ask, and it was a clear, educated, coherent response. And then they showed a video of like a present-day situation, whatever he was doing, where he just is like Hard Knocks something or whatever, a clip from that he was just, it's like, it's not the same person.
Yeah.
And maybe that truly does have to do with some head issues from playing the game. I think it definitely could. But that's going to be the thing here is, does the Seattle take a chance because they know it could blow up in their face at any time, but does the reward outweigh the risk here? Because they could seriously be, they are a contender every year, I think.
Right.
But this could almost push them over the edge in terms of wide receiver talent with the quarterback they have.
Right.
If it were Dak Prescott, we'd be like, man, no. But it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
He can make anybody good. If the Kansas City Chiefs said we have absolute interest in Antonio Brown, would you be okay with them signing him?
No. I wouldn't want him.
Would you want him over, let's say, DeMarcus Robinson or Sammy Watkins? Let's say you put...
I get the talent. I get the talent. He's an amazing talent. But I also remember the days of Marcus Peters.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, they shipped him off for a reason. And, again, he was a great cornerback, but he was disruptive in that locker room.
Big time.
So I couldn't do it. To me, the risk is too great with him because, again, especially right now for the Chiefs, it'd be dumb for the Chiefs to risk it because you've already seen what these players can do and how they mesh together and turn it into a Super Bowl champion. Yeah, you want to technically get better than the year before, but better on the field shouldn't be sacrificing how good the locker room is.
Which it seems like it's pretty fantastic in Kansas City. So that's definitely something you have to weigh. Is it's like his talent, and he still proves it. I mean, we see videos, we haven't on the field in a while, but of him working out and still been able to be that X-factor receiver. It's like, is it actually worth taking a shot here? Because it could change the dynamic of our team.
Again, with Seattle, I understand possibly going that route because the inconsistencies and injuries that they've had at running back makes it difficult on that offense. Obviously, the inconsistencies and injuries at the tight end position as well. To where if you had three solid wide receivers, maybe you feel that, hey, we can kind of take the Chiefs approach. We can kind of bail on the run game if we have three solid targets that we can utilize.
Yeah, Seattle makes more sense when I saw than Baltimore because I still don't really believe in Lamar Jackson's deep ball throwing ability, and I think Antonio Brown's more of a deep route runner. But he can run the slot too. We know that, but I think it makes more sense with Russell Wilson. Could you see him fitting in Baltimore? I think, and I'll say this, maybe the culture fits a little bit better in Baltimore. I mean, I think they would be very accepting of Antonio Brown saying, "Come on in here and let's go after the Chiefs in the AFC, and get this done." So maybe that would work out for him. When we
come back,
I think you're
NASCAR news.
Yes, I was just about to say the same thing. When we come back, updated news on the Bubba Wallace situation that we've been talking about regarding the noose and all that. We'll discuss that next.
Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what.
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you as we continue to follow this Bubba Wallace story. The FBI and NASCAR have released official statements regarding the FBI's findings, which ultimately are
nobody's to blame.
Nobody's
literally nobody's
to blame in this situation. They announced they will not pursue federal charges because here's the main quote from it: no federal crime was committed after investigators found evidence. An authentic video confirmed by NASCAR that the noose found in garage number 4 was in that garage as early as October 2019. This is where when I saw those pictures circulating on Twitter today, they talked about here's a picture from 2019 compared to now and all this. And so that does make more sense on that factor. The FBI, the NASCAR statement is what people want to hear, which will probably make some more sense to some people here. The FBI report concludes, I'm reading straight from the statement here, and photographic evidence confirms that the garage door pull rope, fashioned like a noose, had been positioned there since as early as last fall. This was obviously well before the 43 team's arrival and garage assignment. We appreciate the FBI's quick and thorough investigation and are thankful to learn that this was not an intentional racist act against Bubba. So what I get from this is, and I don't want to blame. I'm not blaming anybody because obviously we don't have anyone to blame here.
Right.
I wonder if everything that has been going on, did that make, it's justifiable, Bubba jumped to a conclusion? I mean,
and that's the thing we got to keep in mind. Everyone's targeting Bubba
or the team.
It's the team member who saw it.
Yeah,
that's what we got to keep in mind.
The team that related
for a fact,
to Bubba,
because everyone keeps pointing out Bubba's like Bubba didn't see it, Bubba didn't report it, Bubba didn't know anything about it until the team member, and like I mentioned to you off air. Because again, from what it sounds like, this is only in that stall and only in that garage. So if they would have been at a different garage, been given a different garage number last year or previous years, even if this isn't a completely new first-time crew member, if he'd never seen it in these other stalls, then I can understand why he would be like, "Whoa, this isn't right." Because that's the thing is, it literally says that it was on the door.
Yeah, you can see the picture of it on Twitter. I think,
and again, and I think you brought up an interesting question: was the door up so it was hanging down, or was it on the ground? Either way,
that's what I was wondering, because if it's like the picture on Twitter where the door is up, you can see the noose basically is hanging there, to where you would grab it and pull down the garage door. So I'm thinking if that's what they're saying is the case, which now they're saying they have video evidence, which I assume
that's been there since October.
This entire time, that it's hanging that way, and I'm sure a member came in and immediately thought, "Oh my gosh, with what happened with Bubba and the Confederate flag, we've got someone targeting Bubba here." So you get, it's an overreaction, but you can understand it. I think that, and that's what I'm curious. I want to know is kind of what, like you said, but their statement makes it seem like 43 is the only one that has that.
That's what it sounds like. That's 43 is the car. It was stall 4.
That's what I mean.
That's the only one that was shaped that way.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I don't know how the things are assigned. The stalls are assigned. Obviously, they were assigned last week, but I mean, ultimately what we're finding out. And again, I mentioned to you, I think both sides are still going to be going bickering back and forth, is ultimately no one's really to blame for this. There was no noose, and if you're gonna, you could maybe say, well, that guy dramatized it, but he did see a noose. He didn't know if that it was technically just part of the garage door. And all things considered, again, with who your driver is, the current state of society, especially, and again, it may be stereotyping, but you're also in Alabama, where it's very racially charged state. That if I'm a team member and I see that, or if I'm a friend of someone who's close to that and I see that, I feel it's my duty to report that in case it actually is a hate crime.
See, I would feel the same way in a little bit, but at the same time, that's kind of been my issue with a lot of things going on right now, is that, and I understand it, but people do react so quickly with emotion.
Well, and I think what should have the fact that it became news is the problem. If you would have reported it, NASCAR, but that's at the same time, we're in a society now where it's instantly known,
right?
Like someone's going to leak it to ESPN,
and we don't know if the guy. And this is what should have happened. He should have went up to the leaders of this all NASCAR and been like, "Hey, I want you to come look at this. Tell me what this is. If they were able to come up and go, hey, that's the normal thing, we would have never.
And that's the thing. He probably went to NASCAR, and again, this isn't. It's not like NASCAR owns these tracks, so they probably didn't know either.
Right.
They look at it and say,
or get information from someone who would know.
Right, because for all we know, it could have been, when they had the race back in October, whoever was in that stall, one of their crew members just said, man, it's a lot easier to just tie this up because it's not dangling down into my face, so I'm going to tie it up.
Yeah, it could be the only stall that has that.
That's why it could be there, and it just happened to be that they were in the same stall as where that is. So, I mean, again, that's the thing is, nobody's to blame is what we need to. I think the biggest thing.
Yeah, no,
there was no hate crime.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. We also are learning that. I think in my mind, and I'm saying this as a member of the media is partially to blame. Is probably more to blame for this becoming as big of a deal as it was.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we saw that charged up video Sunday night, and there wasn't evidence yet to prove one way or another.
Yeah.
That's why you've seen people saying that it was Bubba Wallace doing it himself, or it was a crew member who did it, and this is creating a PR storm. It's like, no, ultimately nobody did it, and that's what's frustrating for me is I know that those people who were accusing Bubba Wallace are still going to say, well, obviously he was playing this up. It's like, no, he didn't see it,
and that shouldn't be the case, and it also shouldn't be the case, like you said, for media to immediately, because they didn't wait around for facts to be revealed. Let's be honest. They ran with it.
And again,
not surprising.
ESPN, it was
it was all over.
Diatribe.
It was all over. They didn't wait, and they never do. But the good thing here is, and this is why it makes more sense to get this explanation now, because like when we were talking to Chris, no one's allowed down there. Like it would have had to be somebody, and that's why too. I think the investigation would be swift, really quick.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it's because there's a limited.
The FBI report said they had 15 people there yesterday.
Extremely limited number.
And had their answer by today.
That doesn't take long at all to figure out. So
if they would have just reported, hey, this is, I think to me the biggest thing was Marty Smith going off, and I get it though. I understand, especially for Marty Smith, who's so entrenched in NASCAR, but to basically already pin something on somebody. That's the problem with our society right now. Is everyone wants to pin somebody for something without ever getting all the facts.
Well,
yet.
And that's what I opened the show with, is that we have too many people. And I reiterated this with, I didn't necessarily think Bubba Wallace was lying, but I think we have too many people that immediately believe everything that is said without facts and evidence being presented. That can cause issues like this. I mean, how ridiculous does ESPN look in this situation now? Oh my gosh, we ran this like it was some huge deal, when in fact we hadn't actually looked at all the evidence and waited for the fact. We had to get clicks. I mean, that's what it comes off to me is, we need to be patient with all of this.
That's why I've said it for the past few years, and why I don't watch ESPN anymore unless it's I'm having to watch a live game, or I need to watch Long Lost Summer. I didn't get to last night because of work over the news press. But it's a case where ESPN is becoming TMZ.
Oh man, it's
and they have for years.
Yeah,
and to me, honestly, you can easily track it back to one moment where I said 100% this ESPN is going that route, and that's the whole LeBron James decision. That reality TV hyped up for him to just say, I'm taking my talents to Miami, to South Beach.
Wow.
Like, since then, it has been nothing. They dramatize everything, and you know
what? It's hurt their ratings. The ESPYs, I don't know how many people even realized that they were on. What was last night or 2 nights ago?
Anyway, but yeah.
81% viewership drop. Nobody cares. They don't go to ESPN as much anymore as they used to, because they stopped reporting facts, and they stopped reporting on sports a lot of the times too.
They basically, ESPN has taken the Fox News, CNN, MSNBC approach of opinionizing everything.
Hey man, we want
and
sports.
Not just providing facts.
We go there for sports. So interesting twist there. Finally, hopefully that can be put to rest with that. As long as nothing else comes of it, I'm sure we'll hear plenty of discussion about it the next couple of days. But again, nobody at fault from the FBI report there, no charges will be filed and no one will be prosecuted in this. Seems like an accidental type situation, just a kind of a misinformation type thing. That's going to do it for us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Big thank you to Chris Dorado for coming on in hour number 1. Who would have thought that we'd have news talking about him with everything and then ending it with NASCAR news here in hour number 2. So big thank you to him. That's Jason Elmquist over there. Tom Dorado on tomorrow with us, and I believe he has Marty Tettleman. Is that did I say his last name correct there? With the Tulsa, he's part of the new Tulsa Drillers team in the summer here.
Oh, I have no idea.
With Tom Holliday, so
okay.
He's going to be joining. I believe Tom Dorado is what he told me. So that's at 4:30 where we have Where Are They Now tomorrow. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. That's Jason Elmquist. I'm Patrick Wheeler.